All right, hey stat students. So this is going to be our last lesson for this unit before we take our test. The test is slotted for this Friday. So this week we're going to be working a lot of review. There might be another video. I haven't decided if I want to do like a practice quiz on Mastery Connect. I will be sending out some information to you about all that, but I won't take up this video to talk about that. We're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So we have learned about how to sample, learned how to design experiments, and what I'd like to do is sort of combine that all together. And we've got one other topic we need to discuss, but we're going to first interpret this video. So I don't know how many of you have ever watched the show Mythbusters, but they ran an experiment on the show. They run lots of experiments on the show, and they themselves are really good at experimenting and even taking samples of individuals from a population and running an experiment on humans. So they are interested to know this myth that yawning is contagious. Okay, so maybe you've sat next to somebody, or if I yawn, because just talking about it makes me yawn. Now you're yawning, right? So I'm gonna pause the video here, and I'm gonna send you a link to go watch their experiment. It's not a very long video at all, but a very interesting, entertaining little video where they're running an experiment. Okay. All right. So you got to watch the video, and pretty cool. Some of the stuff that they did, and a lot of it. Hopefully, you're thinking in terms of this class. What we've been writing down, our definitions, and everything that they did. But I'm going to go ahead and ask some follow-up questions. Now, I know some people said that when I pause these videos, there's like a pop-up that comes up. I'm not really sure what that's about, so I'm going to look into that, because that's kind of annoying. If I pause my screen, like half the screen's covered with something. So I'm going to try to figure out how to deal with that. But these are going to be typed in, so it'll be just easy for you to answer. So the first question I want to know is, the Mythbusters, what kind of experimental design did they use? All right, so for your answer, you should have put a completely randomized design. Okay, now it was a multiple choice question, and I only gave you a few options to go with. But I want you to take a moment. Don't just skip this section. But why is it a completely randomized design? That's what I'd like you to reflect on, and type something up for me. What makes it a randomized design, and give me a description. Okay, so a completely randomized design. Let's talk about what you should have written up. So here is that design. What did they do? Okay, well, they had their experimental units, or their sample of people that were interested. Did they randomly assign them to groups? Yes, they put random. 2 people went in the first rooms, and they got the seed yawn, they called it, or the treatment, right? And then the second group, or the third door, was the control group. They received an inactive treatment. They did not get a yawn. Okay, then they measured the responses and compared the results. Okay, so gave them the treatment, saw what happened with the yawn or no yawn, and compared the results. And they ended up saying, oh, it was confirmed. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So that's sort of what you should have written up. You should have said they had 50 people. They randomly assigned to the rooms. Half of them got, or no, I guess you'd say 2/3 of them, because that's how that was, got the yawn, and then 1/3 did not get a yawn. They compared them and found that 29% yawned after the seed yawn, and then compared to the control, which was 25%. They found that significant. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple other questions, because now we got their design down. Now we're interested in their sample a little bit, okay? Because obviously we've talked about good sampling, bad sampling, and I'm interested in how they sampled. So my first question for you guys is this: who was the sample? So write up a description of who it was. Okay, so you should have said 50 volunteers, okay, that responded to the online ad for extras on their Mythbusters show, okay? So let's talk about that sample. What is that sampling method? This is going to be multiple choice, but what is the sampling method they used? All right, so you should have said voluntary response. So that goes back to our very first couple of units. Of course, we have a simple random sample, stratified, cluster. They didn't do any of that. They didn't have an advanced sampling technique to get their units, their subjects. They were voluntary response. Okay, so these people volunteered to come. Okay, so here's our definition. This is what we had originally wrote for voluntary response. It consists of people who choose themselves by responding to a general invitation. They just had an ad online, come and try out for an extras position. Now, why would this be biased? It's biased because people with strong opinions are most likely to respond. So these people wanted to be on the show. They felt strongly about it. So here's the question: does bias get in the way of their response, what they're trying to measure? So they're trying to measure if somebody will yawn or not. And if you think about it, them feeling strongly about getting on the show should not impact them yawning. Okay. So this voluntary response, it depends on the question type or what you're being asked. Like, for instance, when I worked at Bonefish, if I gave somebody a survey to say how good did we do, only the people that had really great experience or really bad experience would reply at all. And so they have that strong opinion. So they're biased. Or we'd have people we know, like family members or really close friends or regulars, that would do it. So there's bias there with that opinion. In this case, that's not going to be a problem. Okay, if you think about it, yawning has nothing to do with how strongly they feel about the show and getting on it. And one of the biggest things that eliminated this bias was the fact that they were blind to the fact they were being studied on. So that blind effect really does help control a lot. They were all treated the exact same. Okay, so a lot of the bias is really just eliminated. So this voluntary response, they get away with it. Okay, so now I want to ask this question. If they have a sample and you're going to fill in a response here, it's going to be open response. Who is their population? Okay, so you had time to answer that. So if you put, you could have put very many different things here, because they did not in the show make it very clear. But I want you to think about this. When you saw their confirmed result, okay, and you as a viewer, you're at home, you're watching the TV show, you think about everybody that's watched it, they make it almost seem like they're talking about us, right? Like they're saying, okay, this is confirmed for everyone, right? So it almost makes it seem like their population that they have in the show is everyone, okay? Everyone. Now, you may have put people in Los Angeles, because I think that's where they filmed this, Hollywood. People who were just browsing the web looking for a job is the population. So, I'm not going to say any of those are wrong yet, but the show made it feel like they wanted to make a statement for every human that exists, that all humans are contagious to yawning. But if you think about it, would that same experiment, like they would, if they did it with another sample, would it still be the same? Okay, because they didn't randomly select these people. Does their sample look like the population? Is the sample representative? That was a big deal for having the perfect sample, right? It's all about having a representative sample. So this is what we had in our notes. You have to make a representative sample so that you can make an inference about the population. They're saying they've confirmed it. Yawning is contagious. You see somebody yawn, you're going to yawn, okay? But their sample wasn't convincing. So we're going to talk about something called scope of inference. So I want you, in your notes, to write this down. This is really the only thing we're writing here. You've typed a lot into the play posit. But we're going to talk about This is using studies wisely, but I want to call it, I want you to type this, scope of inference. Okay, or not type it, obviously you're writing it. And then you are going to just copy this chart. This is really all I need you to do is copy this chart. So I'm going to pause the video. I know that pop-up keeps coming up, but I'm going to try to make sure that this picture is in there. Okay, so I'm going to pause it. Oh, also before I pause it, you can abbreviate this. Like if you start writing inference about the population, yes. Inference about cause and effect, yes. You can abbreviate that below or use ditto marks or something. Just have this in your notes so that when we have to refer to it again, you can use it. Okay. Okay. So I want to label this, and I can't draw on this. Let me do this. So I want this to be A, B, C, and I'm writing with my mouse, and D. Okay, so we have these 4 zones on this chart. Okay, I want you to think about the Mythbusters. All right, and how they did it. So you're reading the margins. We have were the individuals randomly assigned to groups. Add in your notes. This is treatments. That's what that means. I'm going to do a great job of writing. Hold on. I have my Moby right beside me, but I'm already committed at this point. All right, treatments. Were they randomly assigned to treatments? And were they randomly selected? And this is your sample. Your sample. So that's what it's talking about. The sampling method, the treatments during the experimental design. So I'm going to pause the video. We'll have this graphic in there, and you're going to answer A, B, C, or D for the Mythbusters. Like what the video you just watched, what can they make an inference about? Can they make an inference about the population, or can they not? Can they show causation? Remember, we said that's a big thing. We want to be able to show cause and effect in statistics. Okay, so I'm going to pause it. All right, so you should have said C on this. Let's start with the top. Were the individuals randomly assigned to groups? Yes, they were. We talked about that. Random assignment. They put 2 randomly in the first 2 rooms and then 1 in the front room or the third room. Okay, that was randomly done. Okay, so looking at this chart, we're over here, we're saying it's either a no or a yes up top. We got a yes. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they can say yes. They have shown cause and effect. They've shown causation. Okay, that's what this means. And remember, with experiments, you can show causation. Okay. Next, were the individuals randomly selected? Well, what was our sample? We said it was voluntary response. Was that random? No, that was voluntary response. So this is a no. So we make an inference about the population. Remember, if they almost make it seem like it's about us. They're making the statement, all people have find yawning contagious. That's what they're kind of saying. Humans find that when they see somebody yawn, they will actually yawn involuntary. It is contagious. Okay. They can really only make that claim about their 50 people. They did show a causal relation, that cause and effect, causation, but they are not able to actually make that statement about me or you or really anybody except those people that they sampled. Okay, so they would need to go back and get a true random sample to make a big claim and have representation that looks like the population. Now, they spent 5.5 hours doing this experiment, so and they made it clear that they were exhausted. So, good luck ever having this happen again in a setting that is truly random. So we just have to decide, is this good enough to convince us that it is contagious? Okay, and that's what that's all about. They had fun. So it's not as serious as like smoking cigarettes or like a medical experiment. It's just fun to think about and to do, and it's entertainment. That's why it's on TV. Okay, so this is our last lesson. There's going to be work and practice that's coming out this week, so be on the lookout for that.